there's not as much interest in music, and the kids are not as coordinated as they used to be years ago, because many things have happened. Parents drive them everywhere now. Kids don't walk as much as they used to. They don't ride bicycles in the cities and that as much as they used to. They don't skip like they used to. So all of those things build what we call coordination. So our field at the moment is suffering from a lack of sort of musicality, artistry, and coordination, really. And it's showing up in a lot of the young kids of today. Well, I mean, the art form comes out of the time, and you can't really change the time. All you can do is use what you have today and hope that dance will, it's not on what we call an upswing at the moment. There are too many options around for what you call entertainment now, and they've put dance, instead of being in the art, they put it in the entertainment industry. So now we're competing with the ice shows and the boxing shows and the gymnastic shows especially, and we haven't had like a great dance movie. Like years ago, there was a very good movie with Brezhnev in called Turning Point. Well, that got everyone going, and years ago before that, it was people like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly that inspired many dancers like Eleanor Powell, Ann Miller, all of those great MGM dancers that young kids went to see. If they didn't see ballet, they saw some kind of dancing. And now you've got MTV, which is a different kind of dancing. So it's not going through what we call an upswing at the moment, it's going through what we call a downswing. But it will, as always, it will turn around. Someone will come along and spark it all off, or you'll have another Dirty Dancing film or something like that, or Patrick Swayze will do so, or another, not Patrick Swayze, but somebody else, who will capture the imagination of the public in a rhythmic and dancing way, we hope. Because in America, you get no help from the government at all, none. So in Europe, most of the big theatres are what they call sponsored by the governments, if not all, at least 2/3. So they're able to do much more experimental work, they're able to try things, because everything isn't based on the dollar. And over here, everything is based on the dollar, so even a musical, you can't really afford to take risks. It has to be like a sure thing. And so what's happened a little bit, it's gotten very commercial over here, rather than retaining a high artistic level like they have in Europe, I mean, Europe eventually will be the same as this, because the governments are cutting down more and more, and they're beginning to take on the American system in terms of funding. But in Europe, if you give money to something, an arts organization, you cannot deduct it from your taxes. But in America, you can. There's an incentive to give here to the arts, whereas in Europe, there isn't an incentive. So eventually, I think what will happen is they'll adopt more and more the American way, but one will hope that because of their longer history in the arts, that they will continue more of their experimental work than they do here now. Be professional, they've got to have the equipment that it takes. They've got to have, especially now, they've got to have the physical equipment, the drive, and all of the ingredients in the body to make it, So, I mean, wanting to do it is not enough. You have to have now the physical equipment. It's like if you want to be a singer and you open your mouth and you can't sing a note, all the training in the world isn't necessarily going to help you. You've got to have something there to work with. And if kids want to be professionals, I mean, it's a bit of a fantasy, to want to be a professional dancer or to spend your life in the theatre. You have to have the equipment, and then you have to have people that will guide you in terms of working, so you're not overexposed or exploited too early, and finish up on the heat blood, like a lot of young kids do. You see that in the movies a lot. They get burned out. Yes, huge, huge, huge.
So there's a lot of room for new
There's
talent.
always, always huge opportunity. I mean, if you're good at what you do, there's a place for you in our field, definitely, you know. But I mean, if you're just the same as anyone else, no. It's like with the camera, you know, people like Marilyn Monroe. I mean, you know, when you see her on the screen, she was brilliant, you know, and it was all a natural ingredient. She just placed her head in the right place. You can't teach anyone that, you know. They either have that or they don't. And there's always room for someone that comes along and does it well, you know. But for someone who just does it in a mediocre way, then it's hard. Then you spend most of your life as a waiter or as a waitress, or, you know, filing things or being a secretary or something like that, resting, waiting for that next, you know, big chance. But there's a lot of opportunity there. Sure. And some people, you know, like the way they cast movies now, which is very different from the way they used to do it years ago. Years ago, they had all the players under contract. They were called contract players. And the script would come along and someone like Bette Davis would have to act the role. Now they typecast the role. So now they look for someone with the idea, rather than picking someone that can really act, they pick someone who is very near the part. So it's a different kind of acting, but you still get some wonderful actors and actresses now, you know. But not as many as in the past, because they don't have to act. They have to be themselves, maybe with a slightly different character, which is very different. It's very different. Stephen and Betsy are very, very fine people. I mean, they've had a wonderful background. I've known them for a long time. I worked with Stephen in New York. I mean, they're both very fine people. They've both been in a very fine company. They've worked in the theatre at a very high level. You know, so they're encouraging the kids to try and follow in their footsteps. Some of them will and some of them won't, you know. Some of them it's too much for, and others sort of go on into something else, you know. When you start with young children, you really don't think of them necessarily as being professional dancers. You don't, that's not in your mind. That only starts to happen if the person themselves is like really, they get a passion for it, you know. And then they start pushing, and you see that happen. You see them wanting it, and then you discuss with yourself, is it the right thing to do to encourage this child, you know? Is it something that the parents are going to go along with, or do they want the child to go to college and forget about it, you know? So it becomes a situation with the parents and the child and the teacher, if it gets to that point, you know. And there are many levels of professionalism, you know. There's the regional level, there's the national level, there's the international level, you know. There's the movie level, you know. So there are many different levels that you can work at and be very fulfilled if it's what you want to do.